In English. This is Daniella Levy and Josep, also known as
I told her there might be a problem. I'm from Israel. I'm an Orthodox Jew, which means that I keep very strict rules about things that have to do with my religion, and I would need 3 different conditions that might pose a bit of a problem. The first one is that I follow all the dietary laws of Judaism very strictly, which means that it's stricter than you can even imagine. It's I can't eat food that's been cooked in a normal kitchen. But when I had lived in the United States, before I moved to Israel as a child, sometimes there were events that had kosher catering. Kosher is what the dietary laws are called. And so I told her I would need to have kosher food, or at least to know to bring food for myself. The second thing is that the last day of the conference was going to be on Saturday, and that's the Jewish Sabbath, when I would be very limited in what I would be able to do, because what we do is, to rest on the Sabbath is we refrain from all sorts of things, acts of creation, and that would include things like writing and even turning on and off lights, using electronic devices. So I told her I would not be useful at all on Saturday. And the third thing was that I understood that sometimes in Europe, in youth hostels, there would be, sorry, I'm distracted by listening to myself.
I was invited to come by a young woman I knew who,
Okay. So the third thing was that I understood that there were sometimes youth hostels where men and women would sleep together in the same room, and I would need there to be all women in the room. So she told me no problem. She checked in with the association. They told her that kosher food would be provided. That would be fine. I wouldn't have to work on the Sabbath, and there would be an all women room for me. And only only one of those 3 conditions was actually met in reality. When I arrived here in Barcelona, I discovered that their definition of kosher food was apparently different from mine. And also there were 2 men in the room along with a bunch of other young women. And this was, I didn't really have any options. I couldn't sleep on the street, obviously, so I had to make do with the sleeping arrangements, but in terms of food, I really didn't have very many options. I was just a few things that I brought with me, and sliced vegetables. So where does Jordi come into all this? When we were first introduced in front of the youth hostel, the whole press team was introduced to each other, and he was there, and he heard that I was introduced as Daniella from Israel, and he looked at me and said, "Oh, you're from Israel?" And at first I was a little nervous because I understood that that Europe in general, and Barcelona in particular, is sometimes known as being very anti-Israel, and especially because it was something that was associated with the United Nations, which also tends to be anti-Israel, I was concerned that maybe he would be kind of anti. So I said yes, and he said, "Oh, I was supposed to be there this summer," and that was not the answer I was expecting. So I asked, "Oh, what's your connection to Israel?" So what's your connection to Israel?
I know you're asking me.
Yes.
Well, my connection to Israel is very simple. I think I remember telling you that when we were kids at school, and those that we have been educated here will know that we will explain, and in the yard we'll explain sometimes a lot of anti-Semitic, racist or homophobic jokes, as a play, you know, something that you just jokes, and you didn't realize what you were saying. And I remember that growing up, realizing that as I grow up that those jokes were not right, and then at the same time realizing and being exposed to Jewish history through education at school, and obviously through a very moving movie, the Schindler's List, and I remember watching that movie and realizing from that context that all the jokes we were explaining were really painful. I mean, really painful. And then you discover and you want to learn more, and you understand that, hey, I'm explaining anti-Semitic jokes. I've been told many times that Jews are not good, but I see no Jews around me. Where are they? What happened to them? So you start digging a little bit about that, and then you discover all the horrible things that we as a community did to the Jews throughout the last 500, 600,000 years history. And that's my connection. I just try to dig and understand a little bit more why as a community or as a nation we don't have Jews, and why we don't understand them, mainly. That's my connection. So it was really nice to meet you, because for the first time was like, oh, I know a Jew. You know, it's like the first one I know.
And then what happened?
That day?
I'm saying with the whole thing with the kosher food.
But you have to explain that story yourself.
I just did.
Okay. I remember asking to the I was part of the team of the press team, and I remember asking the director for a list for your food, having kosher food. And in Barcelona at that time there was only one place you could get kosher food, and it was in El Corte Inglés, in a very small part of it. And I remember asking for it, but it never happened. And I remember worrying that you would not eat. I think that the only thing I saw you eating was a Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which is kosher. And you know, it was like 5 or 6 days, so I asked you what we could do to feed you. And you explained me a lot about the kosher process, about the kitchen and the pots and the everything, not only the food.
What happened was, you, when you tried to find a kosher restaurant,
yeah,
and you couldn't find something, and then eventually you asked, what if I bought some pots or something, or if I bought kosher ingredients and cooked in my kitchen, would that be okay?
Yeah.
And I explained that no, it's too complicated. But it meant a lot to me that you went so far out of your way to make that offer, and that you cared enough. I mean, it's not that the other people on the team didn't care. You know, they were sympathetic, but they didn't go so far out of their way to try and help me. And it meant a lot to me. And that was the beginning of our friendship. And after I came back, I also understood that you were interested in learning more about Judaism and Israel, and we began this correspondence that eventually I turned into a blog, which afterwards I turned into this book. So that's how this book came to be. And in the meantime, it's been 12 years since then.
Only 12?
Yeah. And I think both of us have learned a lot from each other, and our perspectives on things have changed, and that's the next thing I want to talk about. For one thing, when the editor-in-chief first told me, like when we were arranging things before I came, I told her, I guess I'll brush up on the little bit of Spanish that I have, and she said, well, you may be better advised to brush up on your Catalan. And I said, Catalan, what's that? I had never heard of it before. I had never heard of Catalonia before. I didn't know anything really about Spanish history. They didn't really cover it in school. It was just not really seen as relevant to the things that we were learning in history. And so I was completely ignorant about Catalonia. And you are very strong Catalan with a strong Catalan identity. And he quickly filled me in on Catalonia, and you were also pro-independence before it was cool. And so he told me a lot about that, and through the fact that he cared about this, I began to care about it also. And last year, with the whole referendum, I knew that it was important to him, so I just started reading about it a lot. And through my reading, I also started writing about it. I've written a few articles for the Times of Israel about it. And that would not have happened if not for you. I would not have had any connection to it. So
it's the same way. I mean, you did the same process I did 12 years ago, because when I had to go, the reason I didn't go to Israel, I think it was 2005? 2006. It was because of the war with Lebanon. Mm-hmm. And I had to go to Israel because I wanted to learn more. And we had a trip planned for, like, I don't remember, maybe 10 days. And it was cancelled because of the war. And I wanted to learn more. Actually, that's where this correspondence comes from. You telling me more about Judaism, story, Israel, your identity, and I guess we did the same process.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we are here to talk about is how friendship can change you and change your perspective, and I think it sort of went both ways. Another thing that we wanted to talk about was what are some things that are difficult for you about our friendship?
The first one is that it's natural for us that when we see someone and I see you, I'm going to hug you or I'm going to give you 2 kisses, and I cannot do it because you are Jewish observant, so I have to do it through Eitan, which for me it's very difficult because it's something that it's very strange, but that's a good thing because it's one of the reasons why Eitan has become such a good friend. I mean, you learn how to understand that they are a team, and in the way that they work is work through Eitan in this case, and you just have to remember the first time I see you coming from the airport, or when I go to Israel and I see you, okay, it's the first time because it's natural, but after that, yeah, that's the most difficult part for me, because we are very touchy. We would like to touch and hold hands and kisses and hugs and everything, and sometimes you have to restrain yourself, you have to train yourself not to do it.
Yeah, I wanted to explain a little bit about that, why I don't touch men who are not related to me. And I want to talk about it on both a cultural level and a personal level, like this dilemma. So on a cultural level, there's this comedy sketch by the American satire program Saturday Night Live that it shows an American couple walking into an Italian restaurant. And the whole staff of the restaurant is Italian, and they're also very warm, and they come, they kiss the woman on the cheek and welcome, and they sit them down. But something they are, as the meal progresses, or they start bringing more and more food, but the waiters are being very hands-on with the woman in ways that are increasingly inappropriate. First it's just the kiss on the cheek, and then it's the kiss on the mouth, and then they're like massaging her hair, and it just escalates from there in the way that comedy does. And the man at some point, he's saying to them, "Would you stop? That's not okay." And they completely do not understand what the problem is. You don't like the food? I'll bring you a different food, whatever. And at some point he says to her, this is, we can't stay here, this is ridiculous. And she said, what's wrong? It's just their culture. And then it escalates to levels that nobody would consider appropriate. And eventually the man kind of drags her out of the restaurant, and the woman is mad at him. And she says, look, they're so upset. And you see on the window, all the waiters and everybody pressed up against the window going, bellissima, bellissima. And then she says, well, what are we going to do now? And the man says, well, there's a Greek restaurant across the street, let's go there. With the obvious implication that they're going to have an even bigger problem at the Greek restaurant. So I love this skit for a couple reasons. I feel like it demonstrates two things. One thing is that there are differences, obviously, between different cultures in how we relate to touch and and what appropriate behavior is between men and women, and that sometimes those discrepancies can cause discomfort. And the second thing is that in cultures where touch is a lot more accepted and just a part of life, things can be more ambiguous. The lines between appropriate and inappropriate can be very fuzzy. And the thing about Jewish law is that it's not okay with fuzziness or ambiguity. When it comes to things that are very important to us, we put what we call fences around the Torah. We make extra restrictions, to make sure that the letter of the law is not transgressed. And obviously the relationship between men and women is something that's very important. And so that's kind of why we have that. And I understand that to many people, and especially the culture here, it's very extreme. But I think I'm also a self-defense instructor, and I teach women how to defend themselves from sexual assault and harassment. And I think one of the things that we teach women is the importance of setting boundaries. And I think we live in a culture that is sort of on the opposite extreme of that boundaries are not clear to people, and it makes it difficult for women to even know how to express what is okay with them and what is not okay with them. And that's why I teach them what to say and how to say it. And why do we even need to teach people these things? It's because the boundaries are so unclear. So that's on the cultural level. On the personal level, I feel your pain. I really do. I also, it's only close family members I know. So that's my husband, my sons, my grandparents, my parents, my brothers. That's it. And that means I can't hug my cousins. I can't hug my brothers-in-law or my uncles. And it's difficult for me to do that. And another thing is that I think there's this idea of the 5 love languages, that people express affection to each other through various different channels. There's 5 of them. The first one is touch. The second is words. The third is acts of service, things that you do for someone. The fourth is giving gifts. And the 5th is presence, as in focused attention. And we all use these channels in various to express our affection for each other. But everyone has 1 or 2 that they use more and that comes more naturally to them. And I think that we have established that for you that would be touch. And it makes it kind of a tragic comedy, because it means that you can never express affection for me, and I can never express affection for you in the way that comes most naturally to you. And on the other side of the coin, my primary love language is presence. And it's often, this is the next thing, is that it's often very difficult for you to be present because of the geographical and other distances. So. But the important thing is that we have differences that can't be reconciled, but we don't really need to reconcile our differences. We need to navigate them, and using compassion as the compass, we need to understand why the other person has that need or that difficulty, and you know, because we care about them, we try and figure it out, and a lot of humor also.
It's been 2 years, 12 years learning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for those of you that I'm going to go off-road a little bit. For those of you that haven't read the book or don't know about how it goes, it's our 12 years of friendship is like me trying to learn something. She will send me emails and messages constantly, not constantly as constantly, but hey, today is this holiday is because of this and that. This is our tradition, we do this and that and the other thing. And that will be, as you probably know, there are, I don't know, maybe 10,000 Jewish holidays, I'm just making it up. But there are a lot of holidays, and there are a lot of traditions, and there are a lot of things to learn. So she would send me a lot of information that, because it takes me hours to write something in proper English and to translate my ideas or my feelings or whatever I think from Catalan to English and then sending the email. And because of my job, because I always been, I have jobs that are very demanding, that I travel a lot, we will never be like, have a normal conversation. It will be like you sending me a lot of emails and then me responding when I can, if I can. And then from there, that lasted many, many years, it went for your idea to put it in a blog. So you would put that information in a blog and you send me hey, I've written about that, check it out.
And now I tell you the page number.
And then you tell me the page number, exactly. But now we have WhatsApp.
Yes.
And it's been
we have WhatsApp. Another thing I wanted to say that just occurred to me in the last 48 hours that we've been here, is that being face-to-face is so different from writing. And I think this is really important, especially in the world today where everyone's in touch via social media and Twitter and Facebook, and people are having conversations that are important through writing, but it creates this barrier where you can't look at the other person, you can't think about what you're saying, you don't filter yourself as much as you would with another person, and you don't feel the same compassion for them as you do when you're speaking to somebody. And it just occurred to me that it really, we've only seen each other, this is like 6th time we've seen each other, and so most of it is just through writing, and there is other technology, you know, there's now there's like video chat that we could use, and there's WhatsApp too, but WhatsApp is also through writing. There's the voice messages where you can at least convey tone of voice. And one of the things, where's Leia? Where did she disappear to? That one of the things that we want to do in our project is have seminars and classes that will be using that type of technology, so that I will be able to participate in it remotely. And it's not the same thing as being in person, but it's close. It's as close as you can get. And I think it's important to have that face-to-face interaction when you're learning about new people, and the direct connection also with someone who is living this thing, and not just like an academic who's learned about it, but somebody who it's important to. I think is important. So.